Hello, everybody. Welcome to Book Passage in the Ferry Building. We're very pleased you could join us this afternoon for a lunchtime event, a little food for thought for you. And I'm just delighted to welcome one of my personal culinary heroes, author and New York Times food writer, Mark Bittman. His many award-winning cookbooks include The Mini Minimalist, How to Cook Everything, and Food Matters. So very clearly he wants us in the kitchen cooking. His recipes are very practical, but they also tell you that you don't have to have a bland recipe. It can be simple without being bland. It can be fun and flavorful. And he's bringing this into his new book, Vb6, Vegan Before 6, which is his personal diet philosophy. That is to eat vegan before 6 and then after whatever you want. And in doing so, he's giving us recipes and letting us exchange our standard American diet, which I think has the perfect acronym, SAD, for a plant-based diet, so that we can have tips and strategies moving forward to become healthier, happier, and hopefully wiser. So please join me in a very warm welcome for one of the best food writers today, Mark Bittman.
Talk for an hour, and then I'll talk for 5 minutes and then take questions. Thank you. I could talk for 0 minutes and take questions. Always great to be here. I said to someone this morning, I haven't yet had my time to move to San Francisco moment, and then I saw these asparagus and thought that might be a mistake. So I'm ready. I'll go all the way back and talk for 10. I'll see if I can do this. I'll do a little bit of life story focusing on Vb6 and see if I can do that in 10 minutes. That would be sort of a sprint. But I started writing about food because I was cooking, and it was the only thing anyone was interested in having me write about. So I would have written about any number of things, but it seemed the thing I was most comfortable with. And that was 1980, and I was living in Connecticut. And what happened during those first, let's say, see if I can do 20 years in 1 minute, what happened during those first 20 years was not only that I started writing more about food and eventually writing for the Times and wrote How to Cook Everything and so on, but I saw food getting worse. I saw supermarkets getting worse. I saw the food that was available to me easily getting worse, and I saw myself drawn to things like gardening and buying chickens and eggs and dairy from a local guy and so on, which I recognized pretty soon was a privileged thing to be able to do, but it just seemed necessary, desirable. By 2000, we had not only Alice Waters, we had Morgan Spurlock, we had Michael Pollan, we had Eric Schlosser writing about these issues, and in a way I felt a little bit pigeonholed as this guy who wrote simple recipes, which was not a terrible place to be, because I used to say, I still say, but I started saying 20 years ago or more, that if I retired and everybody in the United States was cooking rice and beans once a week, I would have had an incredibly successful career, which remains true. But I wanted to expand what I was writing about, and I saw an opportunity, I saw a need, and I wanted to do this. So I decided to write How to Cook Everything Vegetarian, not because I wanted to channel my inner vegetarian, because my inner vegetarian doesn't exist, but because I wanted to live more with vegetables. And it wasn't as if I didn't know how to cook plant food, because How to Cook Everything, the original, is actually a pretty good book. But I just wanted to immerse myself more in that. And I thought I saw, and I see this much more clearly now, but I thought I saw around 2000 the writing on the wall. And the writing on the wall said, and says, we're going to be eating a more plant-based diet than we do now. This may not be true of everyone in this room. It's true of many of us, and certainly it's true in society at large. So I wrote How to Cook Everything Vegetarian, and after that, I kind of felt a little bit, let's say, ghettoized in the Times dining section. Because the Times dining section and the work I did elsewhere was largely about writing simple recipes for people to cook, which is as an honorable profession, but a little more limited at that time than what I wanted to be doing. So as that decade went on, I started to write more and more about eating as opposed to cooking, food as opposed to cooking food, or in addition to, I should say. And that sort of happy coincidence, whether it's happy or not, but the big coincidence is that it turns out, as you all know, turns out that eating well is good for the planet and good for society, and all of these things sort of come together quite nicely. And I wrote that first in a story for the Times that wound up being brilliantly titled by a copy editor whose debt I'm in forever, Taming the Meat Guzzler, which was a story about how we eat too much meat and what impact that has on both our health and on the environment and on climate change, for that matter. And from that point on, I started thinking that all of these things were entwined. That was further, that notion was enhanced by the fact that I went to my doctor and had some blood work done, and it sort of seemed that everything was kind of, not exactly falling apart, but I was showing the signs of age and a sort of undisciplined lifestyle. I was 40 pounds overweight, my cholesterol was 50 points too high, my blood sugar was on the wrong side of normal, I had sleep apnea, my knees were bad, a couple other things. So I went, the conventional doctor said, well, we can do surgery for or give you the CPAP thing for the apnea, do surgery for the knees, give you statins for the cholesterol, figure something out for the blood sugar. No one suggested a bariatric surgery for the weight gain, but that was probably only a couple of years off. And I thought, you know what, this is all diet related. I can figure this stuff out. So I went to see an old doctor friend who was a little more holistic, or a lot more holistic, and I said, here's the story. And he used to call me the champion of blood work. And he said, well, you're not the champion of blood work anymore, that's for sure. You should probably just become a vegan. And which he isn't, by the way. And I said, his name is Sid. I said, Sid, come on, be real. And he said, well, you're a smart guy, figure something out. So I started to think about all of this stuff that I knew. And what does everything that I know point to? It doesn't point to being a vegan, it points to being more like a vegan, or kind of a quasi-vegan, or to not use the word vegan, which is tricky, someone who eats more plants, quite simple. And then I realized that there's a spectrum, and over here on the spectrum we have Morgan Spurlock, not him personally, but the diet he represented, and over here on the spectrum we have whatever the best diet imaginable is. I don't really know what it is, I don't think anyone else does either, but it's extremely high in unprocessed plants, we do know that. And everybody in this room and everybody in the world, nearly everybody in the world, is in between these 2 points of the spectrums. That's how spectra are. So no one is really eating this way, and no one is really eating this way. We're all eating somewhere in here. And I realized that I was kind of over here, and that if I was over here, I was fine. I probably didn't have to be over there. So I thought about rules, and I thought about the way I like to make changes in my life, and thought about the times that I stopped smoking, thought about the times that I got myself running more, and thought about what training for a marathon was, thought about what made me behave myself, what made me obey my own rules, really. And so I made this rule. And I made this rule that I was going to eat like a very strict vegan during the course of the day. And that is to say, not a what's sometimes called a cheating vegan, which is, because Coke and French fries are vegan. So you can eat Coke and French fries to go around telling all your friends you're a vegan. And in their mind, they're seeing you eating carrots and cabbage. It's not what's happening. So I thought, I'm going to be like principled, strict, unprocessed fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds, whole grains, legumes, that's it, morning till night. And at night I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. And that includes, steak, omelets, wine, dessert, whatever. So I tried that, and it's kind of funny because I tried it with a colleague, and she lives in Kansas City, so we weren't like coordinating every day, but we spoke, and she's the one who said, were you Vb6 today? And I said, was I what? And she said, vegan before 6. And I said, actually, yeah, I was, because we were both being pretty strict about this. So 6 weeks went by, I weighed myself, I'd lost 15 pounds. Another 6 weeks, I thought, this is what you call positive reinforcement, right? Another 6 weeks went by, I lost another 15 pounds. And then I went and had my blood work done, and long story short, all of that was the apnea went away. I mean, my wife said that, but my cholesterol went down 50 points, my blood sugar was back to normal, my knees felt better, I started running again, I ran a marathon a year later, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to sound like a huckster, forgive me. But I thought, well, this is great, so I'll just do this. It's not hard, I'll do it for the rest of my life. What's the big deal? So that was 6 years ago, and after 4 or 5 years, a bunch of other people, my agent, my cousin, these kinds of people, my sister even for a while, would do this and say, this is great, because I can do this and it's really working. And I thought, okay, it's time to write a book. So the book is Vb6. So one more minute and I'm done talking. So what's Vb6? The science, some of you heard me say this already this morning, but hey, this is the 1 minute, this is the elevator pitch. The science says this. The science says we should all be eating more plants. This is practically indisputable. We should be eating a diet that's heavier in plants. Vb6 is not the science. Vb6 is a strategy for paying attention to the science. I don't care what anybody's strategy is. If it works for you, it's fantastic. The strategy for most Americans needs to be one that gets us to eat more plants, more fruits and vegetables and legumes and blah, 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 at the expense of industrially processed meat and especially processed carbs and other junk foods. So more plants, less of this other stuff. That's what the science tells us to do. What's the strategy? My strategy, which works for me and has worked for other people, is explained in detail in Vb6. If you can come up with another better strategy for yourself, I'm fine with that. I'm not sitting here saying this is the only way, this has to be your come to Jesus moment. I'm saying this is the thing that's worked. And I think it's more when you think about other diets that are intended to be lifelong diets, as opposed to a 6-week, lose 21 pounds in 21 days kind of thing, which I guess is 3 weeks. This is a diet in the sense that this is a style of eating that I intend to stay on permanently and that other people do too. I think that if you look at other diets that have the same sort of approach, that say, eat the way you want some of the time, but not all of the time, like this new 5-2 diet where you eat what you want 5 days a week and 2 days a week, you practically starve yourself. I think that this is more accessible and doable. I'm going to answer 2 questions before they get asked. The first question is, can I put milk in my coffee in the morning? And the answer is, of course, you can put milk in your coffee in the morning, because, as I've been saying, there's a spectrum here, and that this is not a series of ironclad rules. This is a suggestion, this is a series of guideposts, this is a strategy. And no one follows strategies to the letter. You have to improvise, you have to figure out what works for you. There's a big difference between putting a tablespoon of milk in your coffee in the morning and eating 2 cheeseburgers for lunch. So the second question is cheating allowed? And the answer is obviously yes, because you're already putting milk in your coffee in the morning. But what about the 2 cheeseburgers at lunch? And at this point, it has to be I give you the strategy, you do what you want with it. If your strategy includes 2 cheeseburgers at lunch, if that happens once a month, I think you're probably in the ballpark. If that happens 3 times a week, I think you might have some more work to do, but that work can happen next year. It doesn't have to happen this year. So that if we had this conversation, there was a breakfast among me and a bunch of other food writers. If you come across someone who says, oh, I can't do that, you can say, can you eat a bowl of oatmeal 3 times a week for breakfast? Because if you have, you just changed your diet by maybe 10%, if that oatmeal is taking the place of bacon and eggs. Can you eat a chopped salad for lunch twice a week? Because if you have, you just changed your diet significantly again. So there's levels of this stuff, of course. And if you want to plunge in and do what I did, which is vegan before 6, I think it's totally doable and not that hard. But if you don't, you can think about, well, how do I use this as a way towards moving, how do I use this strategy as a way towards moving towards being vegan most or some of the time? And what can I do in a way that feels comfortable for me? Okay, questions? Wow, quick on the draw. Very impressed.
At the early part of your talk, you said that eat vegan before 6, then afterwards do what you want. And I says, well, what do you mean by do what you want?
I mean, have dinner. How you like to have dinner.
So you mean you can have lots of fats, meat,
Listen, fats. Let's get the fat
so
thing.
what hour are you talking? I think
Right, that is a good point. You know, I was on Dr. Oz, and Dr. Oz, very interesting character. Dr. Oz says don't eat anything after 8. So 6 is not a magic number and 8 is not a magic number, but I think the point we're both trying to make is have dinner, enjoy it, do what you want, but then don't sit in front of television from 8 till midnight and continue to eat. I mean, that almost goes without saying. Actually, it's my fault I don't say it explicitly often enough, but when I say after 6 eat what you want, what I mean is after 6 have the dinner you want to have, including dessert, but not including dessert and a bag of chips and a milkshake afterwards, or whatever people eat. I don't know, I usually go to bed after
So I
that.
thought it's beneficial not to have food in your body because while you're sleeping, you have to digest the food.
Can you hear?
No.
Well, you understood the answer to the first question, so right, we dealt with that. Now the question is, isn't it bad to eat your biggest meal at the end of the day? Fair? You can just, you could represent everyone else here because you're asking all the questions that are going to get asked. I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to answer the oil question before it gets forgotten also, which is, so there's some evidence that shows that you're probably better off not eating the heaviest meal of the day at night. We get that. It's not conclusive evidence. Makes some sense. On the other hand, your body does do a lot of work while you're asleep, and the question is digestion an important part of that work? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't think anybody else does. But let's suppose that this question is based in science, and we can say, but studies show conclusively that it's not smart to eat your biggest meal at the end of the day. I would say studies may show that, and bearing in mind that I just said that they don't, but I would say studies may show that. But how do you want to live your life? And I want to live my life by putting a cap on my day, by saying it's 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whatever time it is, and I want to kick back, and I want to drink some wine, and I want to eat some food that I don't have any rules about. I just want to have fun, and I want to let myself go. If I do that at noon, I am not going to be as productive as I want to be the rest of the day. In fact, I'm going to go to sleep at 3 in the afternoon. I'm going to wake up and be grumpy, and I'm probably going to eat again anyway. So, but having said that, if you want to have a big meal at lunch, if you want to have a big meal at breakfast with no rules, by all means, go ahead. But if you find that you're having a big meal at lunch and you're having a big meal at dinner, well, then you're where I was 15 years ago. And it's probably not a desirable place to be. I just want to talk about fat for 1 second, because fat's the most misunderstood nutrient. They're all misunderstood, but fat is the most misunderstood nutrient there is right now, because we've spent so many years It's really warm in here, right? We spent so many years being told, don't eat fats, they're fattening. But as it turns out, what appears to be fattening is, what appears to be most fattening, everything is fattening in large enough quantities, what appears to be most fattening is highly processed carbohydrates. And when people say, well, Vb6, am I gonna get enough protein? The quick answer to that is yes. You're probably getting more than enough protein now, and vegans get enough protein. Scott Urich, who's run more ultra marathons than anyone ever in the history of the world, is a vegan and has been for all of that time. So getting enough protein is not really the issue. The thing is that if you're hungry, if you're being strictly vegan before 6 and you're hungry, you need to do 2 things. You need to eat more, because that makes you less hungry, and you need to eat more fat, because that makes you less hungry. And actually, as it happens, vegetables cooked in olive oil are much more delicious than vegetables steamed in water, in case you hadn't noticed. So, well, it's true. And the thing is, if you don't feel guilty about eating the olive oil, and you have this beautiful pile of spinach that was really bathed in oil, and I'm not talking a cup, but I'm not talking a teaspoon either, and it's glistening and it's really attractive, and when you eat it, it's got that melting tenderness, and it's luscious, and you sprinkled a little olive oil on it just before you ate it, you're gonna eat more of that, and that's good for you, not bad for you. Okay, I'll stop answering my own questions for at least a minute. Ma'am.
Could you just go through one day of your diet from the morning until?
Which day? I can't do today because it was really, I had an amazing breakfast at Boulette's Larder that is no, it was vegan, but it could not be duplicated by all of us working together. We won't even start. But look, for breakfast I usually have oatmeal and or another whole grain, and I often have it in a savory form. So I'll have oatmeal with maple syrup, but I'll also have oatmeal, for example, with chopped scallions, chopped celery, cilantro, and soy sauce. Or I'll have some form of soupy rice or juk, or some soba noodles. I mean, some kind of Asian savory vegetable carbohydrate thing. Or I'll have fruit salad. I mean, or I'll have a smoothie, which is simple enough. I have frozen fruit in the freezer and use coconut milk or oat milk or almond milk or soy milk or whatever. So that's breakfast. Lunch, if I'm home, is chopped salad or a stir fry almost all the time. If it's a stir fry, it's on, again, some whole grain. If it's a chopped salad, it's just a huge amount that I just sit there and eat. And then snacks are nuts and fruit. And then dinner is whatever I want it to be. So, I mean, there's recipes in this book, but 2/3 of the recipes I've ever written are vegan. I mean, people, you get this question, this is not going to happen here, I don't think, but I get this question sometimes, which is, did you eat vegan food before you started doing this? Did you ever have an apple? It's like that kind of question. So, yeah, it's not, as I said, it's a strategy. I think it's a good strategy, but when you break it down, it's incredibly simple. There's nothing hard about it. Are there any? I have not spoken to a man all day today. No offense, but are there any men who want to ask any questions? Didn't you just raise your hand for a second?
Well, I had your paella the other day. I think you had New York Times. It was wonderful, and I used chicken and skin on. I don't know if that's a good idea or not.
I think it's a fine idea.
It's a great recipe. Thank you so much. Off point, what do you think about daily vitamin supplements?
Your daily vitamins. So what do I think of it? It is off point, and I can't say anything conclusive. I can tell you a really, really interesting anecdote. Without getting too personal, let's say I have I have had a chronic, not major, but chronic and annoying digestive problem my entire life. Everybody else has too, but so okay. And I've tried to deal with it in many, many, many ways, and I found that that eating less dairy was really helpful, but it didn't, and even eating no dairy was even more helpful, but it didn't cure it. It didn't make it go away, it just made it better. And so the reason this is relevant is because I also have taken a handful of supplements every morning for the last 30 years. Because the same holistic guy who told me to become a vegan is also a big advocate of supplements. So I take like crazy amounts, and I've done it for a long time. And I went away on book tour or something, assignment, and I left my vitamins at home. I thought, to hell with it. I never take time off from taking vitamins. It's a total nuisance. I'm just not going to have them. And the digestive problem went away like that. Gone. I haven't taken a pill in 2 weeks. So I didn't know the answer to this question 2 weeks ago. I don't know the answer to this question now. I just know there's an upside to not taking for me. Okay. Anyone?
Yes.
Sir, 2 in a row.
Okay. What's your opinion about using the Vitamix? It's not a product endorsement question.
Right.
What about Vitamix to get more leafy greens in?
Did you hear that question? Blenders for making juice, basically. I think, and it was a specific question because the guy's a Vitamix rep and he wanted me. I have the other one, I can't remember what it's called, but it grinds glass or rocks or something. I think that whatever gets that stuff into your body is good, and I think that traditional juicers which strain out the fiber are probably a bad idea, because I think that the two things that we know that are missing in hyper-processed foods, the two things that are stripped out of foods in order to make them last longer and be easier to process and be more shelf-stable, and et cetera, are phytochemicals and fiber. And at least the fiber is taken out of juices that are made with traditional juicers. So I think a blender where what you're drinking is actually the whole vegetable or whatever is just pureed is better. Having said that, and this gets into it's very hard to talk about this stuff because there's a lot of research that indicates things, but there's very little research that proves things. But some research and some people that I really trust say this, that the closer to its original form a food is in, the bulkier it is, the longer it takes to digest, the more challenging it is for you to digest, which is not to say it's challenging in a way that's going to upset your body, but it's challenging in a way that makes your body work perhaps the way it was intended to work, the better. Weirdly syntaxed sentence, sorry. But the short version is brown rice is better than white rice, and it may also be that raw kale in leafy form with those uncomfortable to chew upon stems is preferable to juiced kale. It's just an FYI. I wouldn't make a big thing about it, but there are some people who believe that strongly, and they're not stupid people. I think I'm going to take one more question and then we'll sign books. Yes.
Obviously, you know that food in the United States today is very political, and I direct a project at the Center for Food Safety at the intersection of food and climate, and like you, we try to give guidelines to people, not tell them what to eat, but rules that are flexible. And I'm wondering, because the word vegan is kind of loaded in some situations, what industries may have come after you and given you pushback and how you have addressed their concerns?
So the question is, what industries have come after me for using the word vegan or for writing political stuff every week in the Times? Using the word vegan, no one seems to care.
For writing political.
Well, the writing political stuff, my boss said to me, that he was surprised the sugar industry hadn't come after me with both guns blazing, but they kind of have. But fortunately, there are laws in this country, and I'm not going to be assassinated. So I'm not even going to be threatened. I could be told that I'm a jerk, and that happens all the time. I'm told that I'm a jerk. I'm told that I'm wrong. I'm told that I don't understand the science. And actually, I sort of learned one lesson, which is that almost no one understands the science, so you're better off hedging, and you all noticed that I did hedge quite a bit when I talked about things that are not proven, because you should. But I don't, I had a meeting with people from Pepsi a couple of weeks ago, and they said, gee, we wish you were nicer to us. And I said, you know, I get that, and I feel sorry for you. Your job is really hard. You're selling crap, but you're all millionaires, and I'm, you know, a guy who works for the Times. So it's not a problem. I mean, the free press, it's not ideal, but we've got it. We do have it. I can pretty much say what I want, and I can pretty much say it. I'm not saying I don't have anxiety, fear, loss of sleep, etc., but I don't, my fear is of being wrong. My fear is not of being attacked. I like to try to really believe what I write and believe what I say, and once I get to that point, I'm comfortable with it. It doesn't have to be a dialogue. I do my due diligence, or try as best as I can to do it, and so when I get up in front of here, I often say similar things to what I said yesterday, but it's because it's what I believe and what I know to be true. I'm trying not to make stuff up. If I made stuff up, it would be much easier. Okay, so we're signing books here. I hope you'll all buy one, I guess. And nice seeing you all. It's a very lovely crowd. Sorry it's so warm, but hey.
We have books available for sale at the register, as well as several of Mark's cookbooks. And today is market day, so you can go straight out and buy your fruits and vegetables and make yourself one of these delicious meals at home. Thank you again for coming. If you'll start lining up at Mark's table and then out the front door, we'll open the doors in just a minute. If you could line up single file, and then Mark will sign your book. Thanks again.
Thank you.